to the local candidates forum on this beautiful fall evening. I am honored to moderate the candidates forum, and aren't we blessed to live in a part of the world where we have free speech?
Yes.
The first thing is that I'd like to introduce our sponsors who've worked so hard to make this happen. I want to start with Scott McLeod from the Smoky Mountain News. Scott, if you'll, I don't know if people know you, but we welcome you. The Smoky Mountain News is a sponsor, as well as Occupy Western North Carolina. And Dr. Alan Lomax is our representative for Occupy tonight. From Freeman in the wheelchair there, because he broke his leg, is representing our other sponsor, and that is the Canary Coalition. And Susan, oh, she's hiding behind me. All right. Susan Irving is representing the Macon County League of Women Voters. So we are very grateful to all these sponsors who have taken the time to carefully formulate questions and give a fair chance and a fair shot to all. Without further ado, I think we have a wonderful PowerPoint presentation by Roy Osborne. And he is going to show that right now, and we're going to get a chance to see in a visual way who these candidates are. Thank you very much. We're going to begin with a question from the Smoky Mountain News. Scott McLeod, if you will take that question for us. Raise your hand if you cannot hear it.
Okay, speak louder. Is that good? Thank you, Pam, for being here. Given the increasingly partisan divisions in the General Assembly and throughout the country that are stalling progress on important issues, please give us at least 2 examples of specific areas where you would be willing to reach across the aisle to support measures that your political party may not traditionally support. If there aren't any areas where you compromise with the opposition, tell us why that is the case.
You first. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Scott. When I think about one thing right offhand, I think about our environmental laws, compromising, common sense in environmental laws. I know somebody tonight's going to talk about fracking, and I know somebody's going to talk about the Corridor Cave over here where we're trying to get a road built through the 18 miles that's left on Corridor Cave to be done. And we're having a lot of resistance from environmental people. And so when I think about that, I try to think about common sense and reaching across the aisle to try to find common sense reasons for making the road happen in Corridor Cave. There's a lot of, we're in our area here, we are the most highest unemployment in the state. Graham County has had the highest unemployment for a long time, over 2 years now. And we need that road to provide economic prosperity for our whole region, particularly Graham County, Swain, and Cherokee. And yet, we have people who have environmental laws and permits on the book that don't allow us to get by there. We've been put off and put off and put off. And what we need is a little common sense. Everybody would say, well, it's little Democrats and those tree huggers and that are causing the problem. And I would say that it's time for us to look at a situation where we can go in there and work together, common sense rules, to try to allow this road to happen so we can have economic prosperity there. And then on the other side, we look at this fracking law. It looks like a terrible thing to me, and there's a lot of special interest money that's in this fracking law where people have been encouraged to vote one way or another in the legislature in derogation to I know that, but I've got to finish it. In derogation to the idea of trying to protect people's water systems down in Chatham County and in the eastern part of the state where fracking would be an issue. So we go so far to the right on one issue on fracking, we're going to do this no matter what. We go so far to the left on another issue so that we get to a situation up here in the mountains where we don't want anybody that's walking on the Appalachian Trail to hear a car going up the mountain in second gear.
Yes, so I'm going to have to play Martha Raddatz.
All right. I'm through. Those are the 2 things on opposite ends of the pole where we need to come together for the good of the people.
Very good. Thank you.
I agree that the environment is certainly one of them, and that's very applicable to Jackson County. Jackson Baker, right downtown Silla, was visited by a Department of Environment and Natural Resources person, told them that they had to reduce their emissions of arsenic from 10 parts per million to 4. And they found out that the technology didn't exist to do that after spending $200,000. And also that the arsenic occurs in the air naturally and amounts to 10 parts per million. And so those are common sense rules we can do with the environment. Also, I've already talked with some individuals that from the Democrat side of the aisle in Raleigh about looking at extraterritorial jurisdiction in municipalities and some additional annexation reform. And so those are a couple of things that I would like to see worked on, and it can be done in a bipartisan way.
Thank you. I'm Mike Lampett, and my comment with that is 2 areas, is the health care, Medicaid in North Carolina. That's an extreme cost we have. It's only second to the education budget. There's other models available out there that we can adapt and use in North Carolina. We do have an aging population in North Carolina, and I recognize that, and we need to have a focus for good quality care for those folks. And so reaching across the aisle and compromise with some of the costs and cost factors we have, I think would be very important and very beneficial to all the citizens of North Carolina. The second thing is jobs in North Carolina. Government regulation, we need to have a true reform with government regulations, and that ties in what my two gentlemen next door to me have said already about the EPA, et cetera. Our government regulations have gotten out of control in North Carolina. We're stifling businesses. We've got them in a chokehold, so to speak, and we're just not encouraging small business, which is the mainspring of the economic engine in North Carolina, across the board, from the mountains to the sea. So with that being said, those are two areas, healthcare and government regulation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'm next, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. A couple areas I think that there's plenty of room for bipartisan compromise and support is tax reform. We need to have lower rates and broader base and fair tax policy. It takes both parties to work on tax policy. If one wants to blame the other for everything that's proposed as reform, no reform moves forward. I can give you a few examples. That would be common sense tax reform. Each one of us in this room right now are subsidizing cigarettes at 50 cents a pack at the state legislature. We could add 50 cents a pack to the tax and save $500 million for education. That's pretty common sense to me. A second one would be education reform. Education is an absolute essential, and we need to keep our commitment in North Carolina. But North Carolina has a history of innovating in education. We were the first state to have state universities, the first state to have community college systems, the first state to have early childhood. There's lots of other good ideas in education from both sides of the aisle. Education is a changing phenomenon, and there's lots of ways to improve it. And I would be happy to work with anyone who wants to improve it and hear their ideas on education. So I think education and tax reform are two that will require cooperation from both sides to get the best possible result. Thank you.
Thank you. We skipped. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
You know, I think as we go through this evening, there's going to be a lot of questions that may be more applicable to the State House or the State Senate than the Arden County Commissioners. But in that vein, if I lose, then the Board of Commissioners for Jackson County will consist of an independent and 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. If I win, then the Board of Commissioners will consist of an independent, 4 Republicans. Excuse me, it will be an independent, 3 Republicans and 1 Democrat. So that question, in my context, probably doesn't apply. But with that in mind, let me say, I've made a living for 38 years bringing sides with opposing viewpoints and opposing interests together. And that's what I've done as a broker for 38 years. So it's something I feel confident that I can do. I don't think in this case, at least for the first 2 years, if I'm successful, that it's going to apply.
Yes, Mark.
Well, again, that's what Marty mentioned about at the county level, the partisan side is not as important role as we have in the state and the national level. However, if I was going to reach out to our Republican side of our commissioners, I would be one for job growth. We have the broadband line that Drake Enterprises, Eastern Band, Boston West put in the ground, a circular fiber optic. Requires very little work, brings in clean jobs, green jobs, any area, the connection to the world is out there. and I would utilize that Nash County has started this. There is legislation that does allow commissioners to use grant monies to take that broadband the last mile. In rural areas, that's non-existent for profits to be made. And I would carefully utilize tax dollars to take that extra mile. Chattanooga, Tennessee has the best wireless system in the United States. You would think somebody from California would, a city. The entire city's wireless. The technology is there. With a little funding and some private help, we can really do some great things for our Jackson County and our neighboring counties in western North Carolina. There's other areas that we could hold out our hand. There's compromise. We're working on a TVA tax. I'm not for raising taxes or TVA authority to two TTA separate and do away with them and create one entity. And then in the process, our commissioner is willing to raise the tax 1%. I'm not about to vote for a tax, but I will concede and compromise by the membership composition of this. I'll throw my hat in and say I think the authority needs to do their own, have their own ability to position the members without county commissioners' involvement. That has been ongoing for about a year, working with our commissioners, and I'll continue to work with them to come up with a plan that will last us 30 years down the future.
Thank you so much, Mark. The next question comes from our sponsor with Occupy Western North Carolina, Dr. Alan Lomax.
In the 1876 case of Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad, non-elected judges sanctioned without argument the concept of corporate personhood. Using as precedents this non-argued concept, the bench, not the legislature, has gradually eroded our individual liberties in favor of corporate persons. In its 2010 Citizens United decision, the Supreme Court, not the legislature, ruled that money is equal to free speech. Our question is, do you believe corporations and other artificial entities should have inherent constitutional rights and that money is free speech under the Constitution? And what would you, as a North Carolina legislator or Jackson County Commissioner, do to further your position?
So our order this time is Mike Clampett will respond first, followed by Mark Jones, John Snow, Jim Davis, and all the other ones. I'll just keep going. Yes.
Mike was responding first to the last one. If you want to, just because you just jumped in first, he wasn't the first Democrat, but he was responding in this way, so I'm willing to go first if you want to get back on track.
I think I'm just going to follow what I'm told to do because otherwise I'll get mixed up. If that's okay with you guys, we're going to be real fair about it. But if you could begin that question, Mike.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. If I remember correctly, I think this has been brought before the commissioners in several counties in western North Carolina by the American Religion, I believe, to adopt a resolution on the non-acceptance of monies for political campaigns and speech. First and foremost, our Constitution of the United States says that we have the right to free speech, whether money's involved or not. Money is a side part of that. Now, taking money to take and override free speech based on the connotation that corporations have more free speech or liberalism than individuals, I don't think so. Number one, my vote cannot be bought. My soul cannot be bought because Jesus Christ has already bought that. So that being said, no, corporations have no more exercise in the right of freedom of speech than any other citizen granted the right to freedom of speech. And as the old saying, money talks and something walks. With that being said, to be a representative and to be your representative, I'm not willing to sell out to anyone. Thank you.
First of all, I think the Citizens United decision has been a very destructive one to our democracy because we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I am not equal to a Fortune 500 company. You are not equal to a Fortune 500 company. So a corporation with all their money and powers and their single-minded interest is not the same as a citizen of this country. And we consider ourselves equal under the law. Corporations are not the same as citizens, are not the same as a person. Money is not the same as free speech. It's an aspect of free speech, but it's not the same. We have tried for 20 years to regulate money in politics. It's been a very contentious thing, another one of those things that some nonpartisan, bipartisan cooperation could maybe advance. But we try to keep it, in the past, until Citizens United, tried to keep it moderate and transparent, and I think that's the way you should deal with money, as opposed to letting corporations spend all the money they want without identifying the sources or their interests, which is what's going on right now on your TVs and my TV. And it's pretty apparent, the consequences. Pretty scary to me for the Republic. So I am open to seeing what we can do. I'm an architect, not a lawyer, but I can tell you it's not good for the country, and I will certainly work to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Marty, do you have a statement?
This as the a Republican member of this panel, I should probably agree with him that we should amend the Constitution, especially when you look at the insane amounts of money that President Obama is raising. But to me, I think, the Citizens United didn't say that money is speech. What Citizens United case said was the judges who voted in favor, was that money is a mechanism to speech. And I look at my race, I saw Ralph Slaughter in here. I know he called some people and said, Marty's thinking about running. And then they said, I think he's got enough money for his filing fee. And that was about it. The other problem I've got with this move to amend the Constitution relative to Citizens United is everywhere that Citizens United is mentioned, unions are mentioned. Yet that was not mentioned in the question. It hasn't been mentioned in most of the other publications or publicity about this move to amend the Constitution. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Now let's look at some of the cases that they like to say were corrupt because of this Citizens United case, the first being the Wisconsin gubernatorial recall. When you add up what the unions and big labor paid to get the recall done, and then all of the ads that they spent against Governor Scott Walker, and you balance that against what Scott Walker raised, it was essentially even. Now we come to this election cycle right now, unfortunately for Republicans, it's not exactly equal, but I don't think that a constitutional amendment is one. I would support it. I would have voted with our freedom.
Thank you very much. And the next person to speak is Mark Jones.
On two different occasions, our Jackson County Commissioners had before us a resolution to request that we have this Supreme Court decision overturned. Both times our commissioners voted 3-2 not to move forward with this resolution from Jackson County Commissioners. I supported that resolution. I am definitely for campaign finance reform and feel that both sides of the political parties are just as guilty for this issue that has risen. It's not so much that effective on the county level. I have not received any PAC money, nor would I on the county level. Whatever donation you get, you kind of want to look somebody in the eye when you receive them and thank them and tell them what you're going to use it for. It's been one of my goals. And I think that if the group brought forth to the commissioners, the proper language that all 5 of our commissioners could vote for, I would definitely get it back on the agenda. I do know that they will be tweaking a little bit. I think part of that tweaking was adding labor unions on the second go-around with of this resolution, and again, it didn't pass 3-2. So I am for this campaign finance reform, but would not accept those monies, and we'll do just fine as we are here in Jackson County.
I think the Citizen United decision causes me some concern as well. But I'm not an attorney and certainly not a Supreme Court justice, and so I wouldn't presume to second guess all the things that they had to do with it. To me, looking from the outside in, that's not my area of authority. It appears as though we're beating around the edges of this problem. Running a campaign takes an obscene amount of money. There's no question about that, and that's just a function of media broadcasting buys and getting the message out. So it's a real problem. If somebody made me the dictator, I would just say the campaign finance reform is no foreign money, and you can accept whatever you want from whomever you want. It just has to be reported within 48 hours. And if it's not, you turn over double that amount to your opponent. And it seems to me that would take care of it. There are so many convoluted laws having to do with this, and if you don't believe that, just try running for public office.
Thank you so much.
I've looked at the Constitution several times over the years, and I don't see anywhere in it where corporations are mentioned. And, you know, this gets right back. I think I'm probably the poster child for this question. Some of you may be familiar with the article in the New Yorker talking about Art Pope and how his money influenced the last election here. That I lost by 161 votes to Senator Davis. And because a lot of that money that was used to advertise against me, and a lot of it really negative advertising, it did really have an effect in the election. And you know, and I don't mean to cause any problem, Jim, but here we go again. We're in the same situation in this election. If you've been watching TV and if you've been getting the mail, you've probably seen something about me. And you know, there's a lot of people that are overwhelmed with that. And I think it's a real problem. I really do feel it's a real problem. You know, something needs to be done about it. If it's a move to amend the Constitution, that's fine with me. But I think it's obscene on both sides. And it's particularly been obscene for me because it caused me to lose the last election. And now I see the same thing happen again, trying to influence people's decision by a lot of negative mail and a lot of negative TV. So that's where I'm coming from. Something needs to be done about it. Like that article in the New Yorker was called State for Sale. That's what it called. And we're looking now into this senatorial district. And I've got an ad that's coming out in the paper, sign on it that says, stuck down in the senatorial district of 7 counties, not for sale. And I hope that the people are wise enough to see beyond what's happening.
Okay. Our third question comes from Susan Irvin with the League of Women Voters. Oh, sorry, that was switched on mine. Let's go, Autumn, and ask your question.
Can't hear a lot.
Is this mic on? Hear you. Is this mic on?
Raise your hand if you can
The Charles Koch Charitable Foundation, well known for its skepticism on climate change, recently funded a major study on whether or not climate change is real. In July of this year, in announcing the results of this study, the lead scientist, Dr. Richard Muller, said, quote, "Call me a converted skeptic. Last year, following an intensive research effort involving a dozen scientists, I concluded that global warming was real and that the prior estimates of the rate of warming were correct. I'm now going a step further. Humans are almost entirely the cause, unquote. My question to the candidates is, do you agree that climate change is an urgent issue that we have a responsibility to address in public policy? And if so, what are your ideas for addressing climate change on a meaningful scale that will also help the economy and create jobs on both the state and the local level? Thank you.
All right, Mark Jones is the first respondent.
That is an interesting question for Jackson County. How many folks are from Jackson County? Okay, very good, very good. We do not have very much industry that adds to our heat, the global warming. Well, what we do have is some concentrations, density of populations, Western Carolina University, automobiles. I know at some point we discussed a way to help with popular modes of transportation transit systems. Often, I do recall, had a good idea about a train, whether it's a monorail or a train that would go from the mountains to the coast. I'd be supportive of that, and the idea to stop at some key locations where some of our students, this might ease some of the traffic on our roads is where this was going, but also can tie into the warming, and that is getting some type of mass transportation to and from various areas, key areas in the western North Carolina mountains, connecting them with Asheville, Charlotte, and further on east. On the county level, you just have very minimal amounts of these sources that sometimes are the culprits, the large, extremely large corporations. Our area is not that conducive to the type of industry that provides this global or climate warming. I do say we're fortunate in a sense. I feel for our eastern cities, coastal cities that have very minimal elevations on their ports or water systems. And those are the areas that I'll have to ask our state and national candidates to do something with, because that's where the problems will be. I truly don't see very much water rising in Jackson County in the very near future, but I am very concerned about some of our coastal cities, particularly North Carolina.
Marty, you're next.
I fall on the side of the skeptics. William Happer, one of the top astrophysicists in the world of physics, head of the physics department at Princeton, David Lenson, astrophysicist at MIT, one of the top climatologists in the world. They both say they feel like ultimately the global warming movement will be discredited. You have April of this year, 49 scientists from NASA who signed a letter saying that they would question the science that NASA had been used to support global warming. You had the IPCC, there were a number of emails that were intercepted and made public, whereby they were saying they could not prove anthropological global warming. I'm old enough to remember the first Earth Day. Does anybody remember what was concerned? The concern was at the first Earth Day. Global cooling. Now it's global warming. When I go on to the United Nations website and I read their division on sustainable development, it's much more about a social agenda than it is about climate change. So, I mean, I'm sorry, but I just fall on the side of the skeptics on this issue.
What was the question?
Do you agree that climate change is an urgent
You don't need
issue?
to read the preamble, just get me to the
That's
point.
right. Do you agree that climate change is an urgent issue that we have a responsibility to address in public policy? And if so, what are your ideas for addressing climate change on a meaningful scale that will also help the economy and create jobs?
You know, the issue of climate change, as it came up in the legislature, as I believe, in this last session, talked about the level of the water on the coast. And the essence of what the problem was that if you follow the theories that they said about climate change, that you're going to take people's property. Where the issue was drawn between property rights or whether you follow this issue about climate change and the falling of the ice tips and the ice caps, and therefore the water coming up, and how we regulate things. So, and I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the truth is, because people are skeptical about it. But when it fires up and it lines up against taking people's property about something that we're absolutely are not sure of what the truth is, then I'm going to fall on the side of the people's property. And, you know, that doesn't answer your question really about what am I going to do about climate change. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do about, you said something in your question about a minute ago about you believe that people have more to do with climate change than anything else. And I think there's a big truth in that. One of the things we just got through, we got a TVA settlement with the TVA because of pollution out of the TVA coal-fired furnaces over in Tennessee. Got about $11 million of that. And what I'm thinking about something we can do about climate change, instead of taking that money and trying to look into forestry and biofuels department down in Raleigh, we need to be putting the money from that settlement into refitting our public schools and our public buildings with solar energy so we can decrease the footprint, the carbon footprint in Western North Carolina.
And
I would really take, I have a science background, and I really take issue with anybody, especially this climatologist, a world-renowned guy that says that humans are the sole cause of this. He's going to have to explain to me how we've been through 2 ice ages, and in addition to that, the solar cap on Mars is getting smaller. Seems like there's a lot more than human footprint that has to do with this issue. I agree that the legislation that we had looked at in the legislature this year was having to do with regulations down the coast. Some scientists were figuring that the water was going to rise 38 inches by the year 2100. And we just don't see the models there. It appears to be just a way for government to regulate people's personal property. So John and I agree with that particular issue. However, after saying that, we need to do everything that we can to reduce our CO2 emission. A lot of global warming is largely due to CO2. And so if we can, like, retrofit Evergreen over in Haywood County that uses 10 carloads of coal a day, we can get them a natural gas pipeline, and we're going to have the emissions of CO2 in that area and be a lot less expensive source of energy as well. So there are so many world-renowned scientists that disagree on this issue that I think that we were very foolish to increase government regulation and take people's property and drive up the cost of energy and the cost of doing business when China's probably not going to do that. So in order to preserve jobs, we need to err on the side of caution.
I guess I would say I am pretty well convinced that global warming is real and it's pretty much a human phenomenon. What we can do about it, the ideas that I feel are important are, I think we need to conserve energy. Conservation is the first source of reducing our carbon footprint. The idea that I am most excited about is having a customer interface, a high-speed internet customer interface with each customer in their utility company. So they have what's known as a smart meter, and they can actually determine what they're buying in energy and reduce their energy loads with an application that they control. That right now we all buy energy just sort of like at the end of the month, we don't know how much we paid for water heating, how much we paid for air conditioning, how much we paid for lights or vamps in our little appliances in the house. But if you know what you're using, and and you have control of it, and you can reduce your use and conserve. The models that have been presented in various seminars I've been in suggest that almost anybody with a simple application they control can save 20% of their energy. Well, we can reduce our carbon footprint by saving and conserving energy. We don't have to then build new coal-fired power plants, but we can use the energy we've already conserved to grow into continuing a low-cost energy future, which is not what I see with Pat McCory, who is representing Duke, and they want to raise your energy bills 15% a year. That's not good for jobs. It's not good for our competitiveness as a state. So conservation is important.
Thank you very much. And mine was on this question.
Thank you, ma'am. Best for last. The one thing that I know about the weather is, that's the one thing that people talk about the most that they have no control over at all. It's always been that way, number one. Little common sense here. Yes, man is the cause of all the problems in the world here. But think about the moon. There's no fires on the moon because there ain't no people up there with boats and houses and cars. Okay? So do we want to have a moon? No. With that being said, what we're beating around the bush here talking about is Agenda 21. And that's a real premise here for focusing on a cluster society where we want to take and have high-speed rail to get you from here to there, do away with personal property rights. It discourages ownership of property. As far as using the environment as an example to take and say, man is killing the environment, this is not true. And when I say not true, take a look at the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, folks, Swain County. I'm sixth generation there. Half the population was displaced in the 1940s when they built Fontana Dam. If you go in there today, people think it's a great wilderness. It's not a great wilderness. It was actually inhabited by 6,000 people from Fontana Dam to Bryson City. So with that said, only God knows when all this comes to an end. But the bottom line is, we are charged with being good stewards. This is an Agenda 21 issue. It's being pushed by groups and to the government, and they're sending out falsehoods that they can scare us into doing things that's hurting our jobs, it's hurting our population, because we are an aging, growing population. We've not had a nuclear energy plant built in 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we move to our final sponsors question. And this is Susan Irving with the Macon County League of Women Voters. We are in a period of rapidly accelerating. Can you hear her? Can you hear? Okay, I hear. We are in a period of rapidly accelerating income disparity, the greatest since the Depression. Since 1979, a date that ends a period of lessening disparity, the top 1% of earners has gained 275% in annual earnings after taxes, with only 65% gain for the other 99%. There has been only an 18% gain for the bottom 20th percentile. Pre-recession, the top 1% held 34.6% of all wealth. The top 10% held 38.6%, while the other 90% of our population held only 26.9% of all wealth. These numbers have continued to follow the same trend at an accelerated rate during the recovery, affecting the middle and lower classes profoundly. In your opinion, is this growing income inequality a problem? If not, please explain why. If so, what would you do to address this economic reality? Thank you, Susan. And the first respondent on this question is Jim Davis.
I think it is a problem. I don't think the government is the proper place to resolve it, though. I think the free market can take care of that. The government should not be picking winners and losers. And we have a progressive tax system now. The the way the tax system is set up, it was put in place by legislators, by politicians, and they're the ones that implemented this this tax system that we have, and so I think that they are culpable as well. I just really believe that the way to get rid of all of this is to try to get the government out of it as much as possible. Doing something like the fair tax, where everybody pays a certain percentage, it's a national consumption tax, and people at the poverty level below don't pay anything. And I just, you know, the government picking winners and losers is partially responsible for this mess that we're in. And I think that this is the land of opportunity, people that want to work hard and want to live responsibly and use their resources responsibly, make good choices, can thrive in our society. There's no question that there's a disparity that exists, but I don't think the government is the place to fix it.
Thank you, Mike.
In North Carolina, 1 in every 4 children live in poverty. When we talk about poverty, we talk about a single family who's making $11,000 a year. We talk about a family of 4 that's looking at $23,000 a year, poverty level. And what scares me about that is that it seems like that the divide between the rich and the poor gets further and further. And we're having more people fall into the poor category. And a lot of times now, those folks are being looked upon as a burden, and the people that don't work. You know, you've heard a lot of talk about the 47% of people. Doesn't seem like they won't pay any taxes, and that they're a burden to this country. But we find that 47% is paying taxes. They're paying employment taxes and different things that their sales tax and things that they are contributing. And what we don't need in this country is to be so divided and looking at the poor people that need our help in government. You know, all of there's a big talk now about having less government. And I don't have a problem with talking about less government, but I don't think we need to cut the help of these folks that can't help themselves. We've got to provide for those people. We've got to provide for the vulnerable people, our seniors. And we've got to provide for those people that have mental health issues. And so what bothers me about all this is seeing that divide getting bigger and bigger. And I don't think that we can stop helping people. You know, there's nothing more important in life. If you're a Christian, the biggest thing that you've got to do is help other people. And that's where we need to be. Our government needs to be helping the people that can't help themselves. And that's where I'm going to be. I'm going to be looking at those folks and trying to make sure that they get the help they need and not be considered as losers in this society.
Thank you so much. And the next is Mike Clampett.
Thank you. Yes, there is disparity, and disparity applies across the board, but we are the land of the free, home of the brave, and land of opportunity. It is our choice to choose a field or occupation to go into to either make money, and when I say make money, have an honorable job. I was a firefighter. I could have been a machinist. I'm trained as a machine shop, tool and diamond. But I chose being a firefighter because number one, I wanted to help people. I wanted to serve people. And that's what I did. So I never worked a day of my life. I was a career fire department in Charlotte, or a captain there. And yes, we have an obligation to help others. But I ask you, what are you willing to pay for that? I'm not in favor of destroying our society by doing away with all programs, because there are needs and there are wants. And you do know the difference between a need and a want, correct? If you do, raise your hand. Ask questions. Yes, I have one there. But with that said, when we have a need, that is something we need to have an obligation to. Our wants are just because we want a new car, because we want a different color. But to take and be a nanny state, cradle to grave, we've got to recognize our country and our founding fathers wanted government out of our lives as a normalcy, and in our lives is the exception. And I think nowadays it is the exception because we have so much government in our lives, and government is taking and micromanaging lunches taken to school by kids in Ashe County. That's a problem. Parent pack that lunch for that child, that should be a good lunch. So that's it. It's a land of opportunity. It's our decision. And it's your decision how you want to invest your money too, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam, you're next.
Well, you know, it's as we study on what works and what doesn't work, one of the things we're learning is when there is disparity between incomes, when the top 20% make vastly more than the bottom 20% in a society, all of the indicators of that society go south. Their health gets worse. Not only the poor people's health gets worse, but the rich people's health gets worse. You incarcerate more citizens, a larger population of your citizens. So equity is very closely related to freedom and democracy. Being fair, Mr. Davis says we don't want government choosing winners and losers. Well, that's it's really just, you just watch what you do. What these lobbyists choose is monopoly interest for special interest over public interest. So what you try to do is keep your society just and fair, and if you do, your social indicators improve. When your society becomes out of balance and the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, we've often heard that Mr. Buffett pays a lower percent than his secretary of his taxes. Now that's a fact. You don't have progressive taxation because lobbyists have gotten in the way of how taxes are collected and levied. And special interests get breaks, big breaks. So if you want to lower the rate for everybody, you've got to broaden the base. And that brings us closer and closer to equity. And it improves everything when things are equitable.
Thank you very much. And Marty Jones.
One correlation that I would invite you to look at as you talk about this disparity when it's grown, and that is the growth and scope of the federal government and the regulations that occurred during that same time frame. Because you'll see it has grown tremendously. I agree with Jim. I mean, a free market, and I know this is not popular with a lot of people, but less regulation. I'll agree with something Joe said. The more regulations you have, the easier it is for a special interest to buy a politician and get laws changed to suit them, which adds to more disparity. The less regulation, the less reason there is to try and buy a politician. What are you going to do? There's no regulation to enforce anything for their special interest. So I think that we've gotten the size and scope of government out of scale. I think that's a contributing factor. I think that leads to a lot of special interest that causes the disparity. But again, I'm very disturbed when I hear this kind of rhetoric, because what's the end game? North Korea, Cuba, the National Socialist Party of Germany, decide who lives, who dies? You know, where's the end game of this kind of discussion, with this kind of socialism? You know, I think it might have been the chairman of the Democratic Party in Silva, who likened his party to Robin Hood. It was going to rob from the rich and give to the poor. And that was the term, rob from the rich and give to the poor. Of course, my son pointed out that he had it wrong. Robin Hood robbed from the government and gave back to the people. And maybe that's what we need to do.
And Mark Jones.
What's very important there is a disparity, and it's ongoing. One way to combat that disparity is through education. Tuition at Western Carolina University has risen 10, 12% a year for the last couple of years. There have been cuts at the state level of education. The kindergarten, pre-K. We've got to focus on education. Educating our North Carolinians will make them better candidates, better for jobs, and can better themselves in no matter what economic situation they are. One of the great areas that North Carolina had the foresight to see is the early college program, which we're now seeing students graduate, where families in our rural area can go to 5 years of high school, and they graduate with a 2-year associate degree from SCC, which is transferable to the state institutions. And so this saves parents, families, 2 years of college tuition that's truly spiraling out of control. We were talking at the commissioners meeting tonight about a family, Western Carolina staff, members who are coming to Western and getting a job and gainfully employed, but the housing market is so expensive they can't afford to buy a home. Therefore, some of these staff members, new staff members, are forced to rent. Well, that's because of their college loans and credit they have accumulated through trying to get a college degree and better themselves, yet their credit has some blemishes on it because of this high college debt. Education, early college programs, creativity will make our North Carolinians extremely competitive in the job market.
Thank you very much. This completes the sponsor-oriented questions for this evening. And now we have time to move to some of the questions that you put in the jar. And I will remind you that the way these answers or these questions have been chosen is based on whether it was a repetition of a question earlier and whether it had local impact. I will also tell you that some of these questions are directed toward a particular office, so not all of you will have to answer every question. But we'll begin with one that's for everyone. And that question is, do you think the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, should be repealed? Why or why not? And Joe Sam Queen gets to take a stab at that first.
I do not think the Affordable Care Act should be repealed. I think health care is a very important issue to every American, and it's a very important issue to our economy. And the best way to provide for ongoing health care is for everyone to be covered. Everyone has a need for it. If everyone is covered in a system, then everyone's rates are lower. Preventative health care is absolutely essential to be paid for as part of this. And I see that people that have issues with health care, when they need health care, we saw them being thrown off of their insurance right now. I heard horror story, tragedy after tragedy about this happening. I know it happened. My wife's a physician. I know what the insurance companies will do. It was not honorable and fair, and it needed to be regulated and made fair for everyone. Healthcare is something you cannot avoid. Everyone needs it. It's definitely a good public policy, in my opinion, to make it universal. And I think it will be lower cost, and I think it will be, we'll have a healthier, more productive society with it. Are there problems with it? Is it perfect? Absolutely, it's not perfect, and there's plenty of problems to be solved. But there again, if we will start working together across the aisle with the common good and the common interest in mind, I think we can make a promising future out of the affordable health care beginnings.
Thank you very much. And you will be followed by Mike Clappett.
Thank you. Obamacare should be repealed in its entirety. 2,000 pages of laws concerning our health care in this nation is, I'll just use a real simple word, which everybody has, another word, stupid. Anyhow, that being said, the reason is Obamacare has a lot of hidden agenda in it. Agenda of 3.8% having to do with your capital gains in 2013, 2014 on your home sales, et cetera. That's to pay. Social Security can be refunded with the $700 billion that he took out of Medicare to take and pay for Obamacare. Also, we have a 15-member board that we're making health decisions, more or less who lives, who dies. Bottom line. Here in Jackson County, we can pull it close to home. In the past week, you have lost 84, you shake your head no, but you lost 84 employees at Midwest Harris. That's a fact. That's on the front page of the Ashland Citizen. That being the case, that's just the first step of Obamacare. Folks, it will get worse. Can we make better what we got? I don't think so. Throw it out the window. Let's encourage interstate competition with insurance. That's something we don't have in North Carolina. We have sole proprietary insurance with Blue Cross Blue Shield. Car insurance also, for example, with that. You can't get a good driver credit in North Carolina. Same thing with insurance on health. You can't get a good health insurance credit for not having been sick in a year. So bottom line is, yes, get rid of Obamacare and adopt and get a better system and get the government out and tell us what our health care needs to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And Mark Jones.
There has been presidential administrations that have been trying to do a national health care program for over 50 years. There's been various administrations try and try. It's necessary. We need it. What happens is when somebody goes to a hospital that they don't have a health insurance coverage, we as taxpayers pick up that cost eventually in some way. And that is where we've got to come up with a protection for all of us. A healthy society is a productive society. You can't go to work if you're not healthy. You can't go to work if you're in pain. If the state had not cut back that 1 cent sales tax, as I've heard some of our Democratic candidates, particularly Joe Sanquin, talk about, as well as John Snow, then we'd have that money for a Medicaid match, which I believe accumulates about $1 billion. And that would go a long ways in health care in the state of North Carolina. I think that it is apparent that we have to have some form of health care. Yes, there's got to be some areas tweaked. Yes, there were some areas lobbying and I guess they call it pork that was tied into the legislation. I think that can be ironed out as we see where these kinks are. But we definitely need some type of national health care. Costs are going out crazy, and again, a healthy society is a productive society.
Thank you. And Mark Jones.
I think Dr. Thomas Sowell summed it up best. He's a Nobel Prize-winning economist. He said he's amazed that people who think they can't afford doctors, hospitals, or medicine can't afford hospitals, doctors, and medicine, and a bureaucracy to administer it. Which I thought was very pointed. If we can't afford the medicine, how can we afford the medicine and the bureaucracy? We can't. I'm flattered that we're being asked questions of this scale as a Jackson County Commissioner, and obviously nothing that we say is going to have affect any policy, but I can give you my opinion, and that's part of it. It constitutes, as the Supreme Court said, one of the largest tax increases on the middle class ever exacted in this country. That doesn't need to be there, it needs to be repealed. It was supposed to drive health costs down, it's driven them up. I had a small business owner in my office today who said he has calculated the penalty, and it's cheaper for him to not insure his employees to pay the penalty than it is to insure them. So those people are losing their insurance. So it needs to be scrapped. I agree with I think somebody's already said it. We need to open up the insurance market, let them sell across state lines, let them sell online. Show that as long as they're bonded and show that they can perform, enforce anti-fraud so nobody gets burned. There is one exception, and I think you're going to hear Mitt Romney talk about that. He talks about repealing it and replacing it. There's one good thing that came out of it, and that's the high-risk pool state to state. And if you're going to be unconstitutional at a federal level, and leave something in there, leave a high-risk pool.
Thank you. Jim Davis.
Thank you. Obamacare is not about health care, it's about health insurance. And I would repeal it and replace it. There's no question that health care in the United States has some problems. But there's also a reason why people with means from all over the world come to the United States for health care. People from Canada come over, and Canada is not a third world country. They come to the United States to deliver babies. You know, world leaders just happen to wind up in the United States for health care. So health care is not broken. And if Joe Sam is really serious about bipartisan health, that would have been really nice when they passed Obamacare, because they got not one Republican vote to pass it. It was crammed down our throats. And somebody said that it's increased the cost of insurance about $2,500 per family. $2,500 per family. The best thing to do, I think there are some easy things that we can do to fix that. And one is to allow people to buy insurance over state lines. My wife and I have been married almost 40 years. We don't need OB care anymore. And we also don't need substance abuse, because neither of us choose to partake in that particular activity. And so why can't we buy our insurance and tailor-make it for us, rather than everybody have to pay a premium that's going to cover everybody else for everything? Let's just suppose that I decided to race motorcycles and I want to jump school buses every weekend. I'm going to be busted up worse than Evel Knievel. If I have Obamacare, what's the big deal? You know, everybody else, these young people are going to take care of it. And as a senior citizen, I'm a part of Medicare now. And the fact that Obamacare has taken $817 billion out of Medicare kind of concerns me, and it ought to concern you as well, if you're close to that age.
Thank you.
I'm for the affordable health care and I'm sorry. I am in favor of the affordable health care plan. And when you look at the way it begins, you're expanding Medicaid. And in North Carolina, we'll be covering, with that expansion, we'll cover 488, almost 500,000 people that do not have insurance at this point. And the majority of the coverage for that is going to be paid for by the federal government. And it's going to gradually, over a 10-year period, it'll go down, where only 90% is covered by the federal government, and the states will take the other 10%. You already have the ability to cover children under the parents' policy till age 26, so you can put them through that very vulnerable period when they're transitioning from getting out of school, going to school, and finally getting out on their own. And there's a lot of benefits that are already accruing from the affordable health care plan. It's not perfect, and everybody admits that, and it's going to take more work. But it's a start. And according to what I've been able to read about it, let's suppose we repeal it. It says, if the best information I can find from reading about it, upon repeal, we immediately add another $104 billion to the deficit. And also, when looking at it and reading further, I found out that the longer it stays in effect, the more we'll be able to pay down our deficit. There's a lot of things that come into it. You know, the benefits that come from it are from the money that's saved from the fact of having coverage for people that didn't previously have coverage. And that helps to bring down that deficit. So I'm for it. I know it needs some work, and I pray for that to happen. But I think we're on the right path.
Thank you so much. Now, this next question is targeted toward the Jones. Both Jones, yes. The question is, talk to us about financing of senior housing and how to make sure it is there for our seniors in Jackson County, and whether that, you may want, if you have time to talk about Social Security and Medicare, big question here. But focus on the financing, please, of housing. And the person, the Jones that goes first is Marty Jones.
You know, I have to be perfectly honest and say that I'm not commissioner yet. I'm still running. I do have a copy of the Jackson County budget on my nightstand. I do read it every night, trying to get my head around everything that's going on. But, you know, I would be less than honest if I said that I could really give you an intelligent answer on that right now. As it relates to Jackson County, what we spend on aging, how we can do it, or what we can do, you know, moving forward. But let me just say, I do hope to be aging one day, and I do hope somebody takes care of me. And I've got a mom, and I'm taking care of her. So, you know, it is something that I have a vested interest in.
Okay. And our next gentleman is Mark.
Senior housing is definitely a need. I'm going to happen to be on the Council of Aging Board, and I see the needs and rights of seniors in our various meetings and discussions be abused. There are senior housing facilities out there, but they're filled to capacity. I visited the Hermitage a couple of weeks ago during the National Senior Week, and got to meet with some folks I knew from growing up here, and I could see that facility was at its peak, its capacity. Having local government subsidize senior housing will be a challenge. What we can subsidize, we can encourage facilities to be flexible. We can encourage a healthier lifestyle. That's what our senior programs are all about. We have a healthy Jackson County program, which targets and guides seniors in various classes, exercise programs, walking. There's games, there's interaction, skills that bring about some mental facilities. There is also an aging part of the Aging Council on Aging is an adult daycare, where working families who are burdened by the presence of having to care for their parent can put this parent in a day program so they continue working. Sometimes it's those type of programs that can bring more success than so much housing. Housing is a need. Affordable housing is a need not just for seniors, but all sectors of our population. And our county has grown in the last 10 years. We have grown 25%, Jackson County. And a lot of those are folks retiring, moving to the area, and we must continue our recreation programs. I might digress off the question, but all about seniors and keeping them moving forward and healthy.
Thank you. Very much. Now, the next question is addressed just to Mr. Snow and Mr. Davis. What are your thoughts on women's issues surfacing today? For example, access to birth control, control over her own body in regard to pregnancy, equal pay, and equal status for loans and credit.
Thank you.
And Jason first.
I'm for all of those. I definitely believe that women should have control over their body.
Please just down.
When you start talking about that, you start talking about abortion. And on the abortion issue, I'm against abortion, except in the case of rape and incest, and when the life of the mother is in jeopardy. And, you know, there's a lot of things going on that are very difficult for women. Jim and I got an argument over the Planned Parenthood issue and the right to women to know that. And, you know, the thing that really got to me in the Planned Parenthood thing is trying to make sure that low-income ladies that don't have the ability to get to health care for contraceptive purposes and for things of that nature, that they have that ability to do that. Another thing about Planned Parenthood, they also provided for a lot of cancer screenings for breast cancer and cervical cancer. And there's some very good things going on there. One of the other things that was really good about what Planned Parenthood did, they did a lot of counseling with females that got pregnant about what kind of situation they were in. see cutbacks in our Smart Start program that deals with the ability for mothers to have adequate child care. And when the cutback, we have a lot of mothers that have lost that ability to have adequate child care. And if you can't have good child care, you can't get a good job, and you feel like you have to stay at home and take care of your kids. Most people have two people working in families today. So there's a lot of pressure on the women in our situation, in our society now, on state level and federal. And I just speak to those, saying that I'm aware of that, and I want to do anything I can to make it better.
I'd like to address the Planned Parenthood. What the state budget did is we took money away from the Planned Parenthood and took that equal amount and put it into our local health departments to give the same sort of services that John was talking about. We think those services are important, but we also know that Planned Parenthood is the largest abortion provider in the country. And if we're giving money to Planned Parenthood on any level, we are allowing them to do more abortions. And so if women are really concerned about those issues, they can go to the local health department and have those same services. We took that money and gave it to the health department. I think that women should have all the rights that men do, as far as equal pay and equal opportunity. You know, more than half of all professional schools in the country now are occupied by women, and they're doing very well. And I kind of like women. My mother was one, and I'm married to one. And if you talk about abortion and how that is, you know, probably half of the abortions in this country would grow up to be women. And so this war that supposed war on women is just bogus. It's just totally absurd. I just can't see that at all. And I think that we need to be mindful of everybody's rights. As far as birth control or, you know, my lands, if, was it $7 a month for birth control? If you can't afford birth control or your partner can't pay for it, the government is not your daddy.
All right. The next question is about our libraries, and it is for all the candidates. Here's the question. Public libraries are dependent upon state aid appropriated by the legislature and distributed through the state library to provide services to the public, such as assistance with job searches and resume prep, and researching political candidates. These funds have been cut 13.5% during the last 2 years. Where do you stand on restoring these funds, and what are your views about public library services? And the question first goes to Mike Clampett.
Thank you. Well, public libraries provide for a very important stopgap in our community for other education, not only to students in school and research, et cetera, but also for other individuals that only get library books, et cetera. As far as taking and restoring, first I'd like to know if we have any other organizations within the state that we have a duplication of services. And it could be the reduction of the 13% on that public library had to do with duplication of services. And if there is a duplication of services and it's already being provided by one group, why should we pay two groups? No brainer for me there. As far as doing the political candidate information and research, I can think of no less than 3 voter guides that's already out for this year's election, and that would be a duplication of services there. So that being said is, I'd have to know if there was a duplication of services for what they're doing at the libraries before I would want to take and even think about increasing the budget or supplementing the budget, because that's money wasted we could use somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Sam Queen.
I'm a big supporter of public libraries because education is a lifelong enterprise. You have to continue to do it. Our libraries have done a terrific job, our public libraries across the state, of helping folks get internet training. I've been to classes here at Jackson County Public Library. It is one outreach among many. We have great public schools, we have great community colleges, we need great public libraries. Again, to meet the general need for lifelong learning. And an educated populace is an essential element to a sound democracy. So just my civic education sensibilities tell me that public libraries are very important. So it is a priority of mine. When you have budgets, you have to make hard decisions all along. But I know for a fact in the previous budget, when I was in the General Assembly, we were not overspending on public libraries. It was tight then, so to cut it from a greater amount, I would be very much in favor of not doing that and trying to restore those funds, because the demand for lifelong learning for all of us and for every sector of society continues to be greater and more complicated, and libraries do a terrific job of filling in the gaps for the citizens across our county. And the other, it's many things they do here. Public programs just like this one. We're in the library here with Civic Ed. So education and civic education is a key role that public libraries are absolutely essential in a democracy. So I support them strongly.
Thank you very much. And Marty Jones.
Well, here we are in a beautiful public county library. I think if you look at Jackson County's, from a commissioner's standpoint, if you look at Jackson County's generosity towards public libraries, it'd be hard to make a case, that we are scrimping. And I would think that the reductions that were referenced in that question were probably at the state level, not at Jackson County level, because we've done really well. Let me just say this, as hopefully a District 4 Jackson County commissioner, we have a beautiful public library in the south end of the county. It was built with virtually zero tax dollars. So I get back to the argument that getting money from government and having government pay for it, and having your taxes pay for everything is not always the best way to go. I'll give you another example. Out of the 10 public schools in Jackson County, there is one honor school of excellence. It receives the least funding. So you don't have to look at this continued government funding to support your programs such as a public library, or for that matter, a public school.
We're blessed to have this facility in Jackson County. It took about 12 years to bring this building to where you see it now. The wheels of government, even on the county level, are slow. We have seen many cuts from the state level in the last 2 years from all areas of funding sources for counties. We chose to, we had been some time since we'd spent invested in our libraries in Jackson County. 6 years ago, when I first became county commissioner, the idea of the library had been ongoing. There had been various site selections, whether it was Southwestern Community College, whether it was over here at Jackson Plaza. We had this old courthouse that needed attention. We didn't want to have a money pit of something like a museum, and which is just a constant drain. So an idea came up with the commissioner was trying and bring this old courthouse into a level by utilizing, getting rid of some of the old buildings out back. There was size on this space site for a 26,000 square foot library public facility. It's very essential. So we didn't have the money from the state, so the county had limited resources. So we asked the citizens, some of you are here tonight, to rally and raise $1.8 million to outfit everything in this building. And it was the citizens that rallied to help the commissioners put this, what you see in this room, what you've seen walking around, and it's a feather in the cap of every Jackson County citizen. But it was an effort, public and private effort, and my hat's off to some of the fundraisers. Vance Davison is in the room now, others that I know that did a lot to bring this to fruition. and we're very proud to be sitting here and have you in our library.
Thank you. And the next person who responds to that question is John Davis.
Thank you. I too believe in libraries. As a matter of fact, when I was a county commissioner in Macon County, I voted to build a new. And it's built, and I think it's paid for. Or close to it by now, so I'm really proud of that. Joe Sam asserts that he didn't scrimp on library funding when he was in the legislature, but he must have done a lot of other damage, because when we took over, we were $2.5 billion in the hole. The state was broke. The state was broke. And when you're broke, some good programs get cut. And you try to make priorities, and you try to determine where you can do the least amount of damage to the community, to your citizens. And I'm very proud that I think that we did that. We made a lot of changes, and we have a lot more changes to go to become more efficient in doing the things that we do. But that's why we cut the money that libraries got by 12.5%. I didn't remember the exact amount, but when you're broke, you have to make tough decisions, and that's what we did.
I'm a strong supporter of public libraries. As I remember your question, the idea was there was some duplication for funding and things of that nature. You know, whatever, when you look at something like this in a budget situation that we're in North Carolina, you have to make sure that you are doing the right thing and that you cut where you need to be cut. If you've got duplication of services, then of course that's a good place to cut. When I think about the library, I think about when I was a kid down on Hanging Dog in Berkeley. Manhattan Regional Library, they had a book mobile that brought those books out to the community. And our kids and our adults were able to take advantage of that, and it was a wonderful thing. And I think, I visited in every library, I think, in this 7 county district, and I'm very proud of them. Out in Cherokee County, we have a library that also has a lot of historical Indian relics there. And, and it's got a pioneer home that's rebuilt in the basement of it. It's a museum in a lot of respects, and it's a center for learning in our community. I'm very strong supporter of those. I would look to restore funding if it's restoring funding that's needed. And I think they're essential for continued learning and learning all your life, as Joe Sam was talking about.
Great, thank you very much. The next question is about jobs. It's a quick and simple question, but not a simple answer. And that is, what is your plan for job creation? And the first response is to come from Mark Jones.
Well, I mentioned earlier about the opportunity we have with the broadband fiber optics line and circle that goes through our Jackson County. That is very, very key. As a commissioner, you can start we are now starting, or I should say, energizing our Economic Development Council. And that is going to give us some ideas on how we, one, help the businesses that we currently have in Jackson County expand. Small business is the key here. Most of these ideas are small businesses. We need to support our current small businesses, the structure they are in various avenues. But as a county commissioner in a rural county with the topography we have, our industrial sites are very limited. Our transportations are limited. So we truly have to focus on small business. Recently, the citizens of Jackson County came forward with and voted for an alcohol referendum back in May. That piece of legislation or that election back in the primary allowed at least 30 jobs that I know of throughout Jackson County. All small businesses, restaurants, retail clerks, salesmen, stock guys, gals. So you've got to start at a small business, and there is no magic wand that we can say, yes, we're all pro growth, we're all pro jobs, we are. But let's give those type of jobs the technology they need. Let's create the opportunity for the green jobs. Let's find ways to connect that last mile to our rural areas. I know recently Jackson County lost 24 jobs at Med West. Well, that's all part of a structuring process, and that maybe has attempted but failed. We need to give support to our medical areas in this county, particularly because it's such a big employer throughout Jackson County.
That question next goes to Marty Jones.
Well, I think one of the first things that we need to do is to start building again. I know it's not popular, but we heard tonight from our county manager at the Board of Commissioners meeting that one home creates 40 jobs. So we had a good, strong home building industry. In my opinion, it was overregulated in 2007. We went from fully employed, about 3 or 4% unemployment, to 9.6 for several years, as high as 13, then down to 9.6, and then now it's down to about 8.4. But it was also reported that we had an uptick in home building, which lowered our unemployment rate. So I think we need to look at that again. I applaud our new commissioners and their work on the TDA to get the tourism industry revamped. I collected and paid the old TTA dollars for a long time. I never really saw any benefit. So I applaud these guys for taking that on, because I think tourism is an important industry for Jackson County. I've had the good fortune to meet, to attend a couple of meetings over in Kuala, where they are working with planning and hopefully going to revamp the commercial corridor ordinance, at least to make it workable, so that there can be some growth along that 441 commercial corridor. Right now, it doesn't work. That, I think, will lead to more jobs. And keep it in line with what our 3 new commissioners have started doing, which is to inventory and promote our assets. I don't think that was ever done. There was never a cohesive. I served on economic development years ago when Eddie Madden was the commissioner, and it was never very cohesive. And I think now, with what we're doing, we can create jobs.
Okay, thank you very much. The next response on that goes to John Smith.
Jobs. Jobs. Well, it's not jobs, it's education equals jobs. That's what it's all about. And as we look at what our legislature has done about the jobs program, they absolutely don't have a jobs program. They said that the tax break that they gave to the businessmen was a jobs program. They would build jobs, but what it amounted to was $3,500 for a lot of rich businessmen that were making up to $800,000, and there's no limit on that kind of tax break for them. That was the only thing that they said that they got about jobs. Joe Sam's probably going to say something about jobs programs that we had when we were in the legislature, and one of them was called the 612 or whatever, something like that. It's really a part of the Jobs Now program. And what that was, in each region of the state, we would try to find areas where jobs could be created and jobs that required some training. And what we did, we looked at things like a CNA job, a machinist job, a job in medical records, the phlebotomist that draws blood in the hospital. All those jobs, that things were like that, were available to people. And what we did, we established a course for them that they could get certified to do that job in six months. And therefore, we found an area where jobs were available. We got the training for them, got them trained in 6 months, and we put thousands of people in jobs. That was a jobs program, ladies and gentlemen. But we don't have a jobs program in our legislature now. And we're being hurt by the fact that we cut education so much. We've increased the tuition to our community colleges by 23% over the last 2 years. And the community college is the very basic place where you start to do your workforce training to try to create new jobs and to create people that can fill those jobs. We've got a skills gap in North Carolina, all over the United States. And we need to try to make sure that we get involved with our community colleges and start to move forward with the jobs program.
Thank you. next response to that question is from Jim Davis.
Thank you. The legislature did not take the same approach that the previous legislature did. We took the approach that we wanted everybody to have an equal opportunity. And so we reduced the rate for everybody. We didn't target industries or places or parts of the state where we thought deserved our attention. We targeted everybody. We gave the first $50,000 of your income, regardless of your income, was state income tax free. And what that does is it puts more money into the economy. Allows businesses to grow and let them decide where they want to spend that money. We also need to look at, talking about jobs, we could lose 1,200 jobs in Haywood County at Evergreen if we don't delay the EPA implementation of the CO2 emissions over there. We've got to do that. We have to delay it some so that we can get a natural gas pipeline over there to keep those jobs here. That company is owned by a private individual with businesses all over this world. He doesn't have to stay there. We want him to stay there. All those people want those jobs. We need to stay there. I was the lead dog in the Senate this year to get the live dealers bill through. Talking about jobs, that's 500 jobs on the Eastern Band. 80% of those jobs go to non-tribal members. It's going to be $80 million a year to an already $375 million economic impact in the western part of the state. $80 million the first year. And the second casino that's going to be built is going to be in John's home county. That's going to be a minimum of 1,000 jobs to start with. Now that is a jobs program.
Well, this is a really important question and it's very complex. Let me just say a few things we need to do. First of all, we do need to focus on workforce development. That's key to making our region competitive. We need to focus on broadband. I very much agree with Mark Jones. Broadband, high-speed internet is absolutely a key to building small business infrastructure in western North Carolina and across the state. It's particularly important here in the mountains. We need to keep our, we had choices that were made in this legislature that cut community colleges 20%. Not only did they raise their tuition, but we cut their funding per student 20%. We cut our universities 15%. These are engines of innovation. If you want to create the new jobs in a changing economy, you've got to keep your engine of innovation and your job creators, the ones that are proven to do that. Now, I got $3,500 tax break. Every architect, lawyer, dentist, accountant got $3,500. It worked out to be about a $300, $400 million tax break for being a professional. My secretary didn't get one. My wife's nurse didn't get one. It's just the highest and best got the tax cut. It would have been far smarter to keep that money and keep education whole, keep our community colleges working for workforce and average folks and the young people's job opportunities and keeping North Carolina competitive. The second thing is, another big thing is low-cost energy by conserving and keeping a low-cost energy future for North Carolina. That will keep us competitive. So those are a few things that will create jobs.
Thank you. And Mike.
Best for last one more time. Jobs. That's a real ball of twine with a lot of strings attached to it if you think about it. It's tied to education, it's tied to opportunity, it's tied to what area, demographics the people live in, et cetera. Also what's available job-wise in that area. On the state level, we need to reduce regulations. We're not a business-friendly state. Because we're not a business-friendly state, we have lost BMW to South Carolina and several other major corporations with that. So reducing corporate income tax and making the state less against businesses would make the state better for jobs. As far as education, I'm the only person up here that has worked in the community college system. I was director of fire rescue at Central Piedmont in Charlotte, corporate continued education. We had one of the best working workforce development departments in the community college system. With that being said, FTEs are what's called full-time equivalents. And the most learners that we had at community college, and you will find across the state in all the community colleges, are adult learners. They're not first-time students or full-time students that's coming to class. They're adult learners wanting to learn a new occupation to be able to go into a different field because, one, they lost their job in their field, or they're wanting to expand their education. Jobs are directly tied to education. There are several jobs in the state that they can have mandatory upgrades, and that's upgrade training hours per year. With that being said, those hours, they need to be related to diversity's workforce. Example here in Jackson County, a lady does upgrade for flea and tick. She has a salon for animals, dogs and cats. She has to go to Asheville and get an upgrade. Now that's not user-friendly for her job. So we need to be user-friendly with the regulations. Thank you.
We have just 10 more minutes left in the forum, and our representatives from the sponsors have been hard at work picking these questions from the jar. I wish we could ask all the questions from the jar because there's some really good ones in here. But we probably have time for 3 more, and they have ordered them for me. I'm not choosing these. And all 3 of these are targeted toward the Senate candidates. So, let me begin by picking on you all. Do you believe that genetically modified ingredients need to be labeled on food products? And if yes, how would you work for this to be mandated in North Carolina? And if no, why? And Jim Davis, you get first.
We all eat genetically modified foods, and I have been for years, and I'm still living. It appears as though that's a federal regulation of the FDA, so I think that that's not my role as a state legislator, but I don't, I think we have so many other things to worry about that's way down our list.
I agree with him.
To hear that. The second question in this group is also for Davis and Snow. Does your agenda include restoring our state sovereignty and protecting us against further infringement? Please discuss your understanding of Amendment 10. Good luck with that one.
Amendment 10 to the Constitution?
Yeah.
Go for it, Jim.
I was going to let you explain it, and I was going to say I agree with that. And I'm a strong proponent of state sovereignty. Over the history of our government, my understanding is the Civil War really started when it was gone upside down. I believe that local government is the best government. When I was a county commissioner, I could, some of these people were my patients, played ball with them, went to church with them, saw them in the grocery store, and they are really able to get to their legislators. I don't believe I've ever spoken to substantively to a federal legislator. They're so far removed from what's going on. Local government is the best. We know what's best for our citizens, but I never did subscribe to the notion that all was in knowledge emanated from Raleigh or Washington. And I just was really curious as to why we at the local level were so incompetent or corrupt to know what's best for our community. We were smart enough to generate the revenue, but too foolish to know how to spend it. So I think it's way past time for us to start pushing back against the federal government. One of the ways that I attempted to do it last time was to repeal Obamacare. We lost that vote. The governor vetoed it, and we didn't have enough votes to override it. Another thing about Obamacare, it's such a good deal. Why is it mandatory?
Thinking about sovereignty, I think about the Revolutionary War. The whole reason we fought the war is to try to be sovereign, to be a sovereign country, and then sovereign states, and then sovereign communities. We do need to make sure that our local governments are in control. And Jim, those mandates that you don't like from state government, that's the kind of thing that need to make sure that we don't put those mandates on our local governments and without any funds to take care of it. I think that that's an important thing. The sovereignty of our local governments is important, and we do not need too much intervention from state, and we don't need too much federal intervention on the state.
Thank you very much. And the final question for this evening also goes to you two lucky gentlemen. Do you think that enough research was done on the environmental effects of fracking before the fracking bill was passed in the North Carolina Senate? And this time we're going to
Fracking. You know what fracking is? Well, what it amounts to is that you find chemicals that are strong enough to break down the soil that has natural gas in it. And think about it. And what they do with that, they put it under pressure, chemicals that are strong enough to break down the soil and create the natural gas that makes it come out. And they put it down about 2,000 feet, and then they go out about a mile with that stuff, with the water and the chemicals under pressure. And then it works on the soil and it causes the gas to be released. And when you think about chemicals that are strong enough to make the gas be released from the shale soil, think about what that kind of thing does for your water system. I think that, you know, whatever kind of research, they're still researching it. They haven't determined yet whether or not it can be done safely. I don't think that it can. Think about the residue of the chemicals that are in the soil once it's over with. I'm sure they just all won't evaporate down there 2,000 feet and a mile out to the in the countryside. And think about all the water people that use well. Down in that Chatham County area where this fracking is supposed to be the most possible, the most prolific. You know, there's a lot of people that still get their water from wells. And when you think about it, there's only, you know, food and water in life. That's what, you know, that's the thing that sustains life. And when we start messing around with people's water, we better be careful, because if once that chemical gets into the water, there's no coming back, folks. That's the end of it. And I just don't think it's worth the effort, and I don't think there's that much money in it. As I remember what they said about fracking, there's about a 12-day national supply in North Carolina. Now, I don't know how that figures out, but that's not much. And so there's got to be another way for us to deal with that. Let somebody else do it in their state. I don't think we need it here. I hope that I get a chance to go back. I think my vote will be against fracking.
Thank you.
Well, fracking's not going to be undone. Our vote was that we are going to start it, but you know, the research is never complete. Research is always a dynamic process, and so we will never, you know, stop looking at better ways and more safe ways to harvest our resources, the natural resources that we have in the state. And so we believe that it can be done safely. We just had a Senate committee and a joint committee, actually Senate and the House, returned from Texas, looking at this very broad, you know, issue. We also have people that have been to Pennsylvania, and North Dakota is a boom, you know, a boom state because of harvesting our natural energy resources. We're looking at like 10,000 feet, you know, water. Nobody has a well more than, you know, what, 1,000 feet. The water is above that, and so we're not messing with the water table. Nobody wants clean water or clean air more than I. You know, but if we can do this safely, and it appears as though we can, the research will never be done. It will always be in process. We need to harvest our energy resources, become energy independent. And because the money that we spend on fuel, on energy to countries that don't like us very much, is a real problem. So I'm all for continuing this experiment that we call fracking so long as it can be done.
Thank you. We have come to the end of our forum, and I want to thank you for your very respectful participation in this forum. I want to ask for your applause first for the sponsors of the forum. mentioned earlier, we're going to give our candidates a chance to leave first and go down into the atrium, which is this area here. And if you didn't get to ask your question, maybe you could corner them. But there is coffee by Signature Brew Coffee Company, and we thank John for providing that. And thanks again for your attention and your participation.